Recording is on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Socially Radical Guitarist. Song just played was Rapture by Coffee. The exception to a rule. You know, a very popular mainstream song in the West, played by an African from Jamaica that doesn't conform to the general stereotypes. It's just that good of a song. So every now and then there's an exception to the rule, and that's a very good one. So now we're going to introduce our guest finally here, after a little bit of a delay. I apologize for that. But here he is. He's back. Booker and Ngesa Omole. Thank you for coming back on the show, Omole.
Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you and at least to clarify some of the ideas that and build on our experiences. As the people of the South, and of course the people of the Southern Hemisphere and the North, like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, that might not be the case for very long. I am in Canada for the moment, so that is technically true. But we'll see how long that lasts. Now,
Okay.
for we, a lot of what was talked about the external dynamics that affected your campaign, it was discussed with Comrade Gabutho Nicholas Mabetta. So I recommend people go look up that interview if you want to learn more about that. I'm going to get into more specific questions that haven't yet been asked. So let's just start with Benedict. Benedict Wachura, who ended up being a Benedict Arnold with your campaign, from what I hear. Um, can you describe a little bit, his background um, and how he ended up in such a prominent position within the party, and why you argue that he caused a lot of chaos with unilaterally signing that agreement on behalf of the party, um, joining the opposition in that way?
Uh, okay. Thank you very much, comrade, for asking that question. First of all, I would like to say that Benedict Bashira is has been a known comrade of mine for many years, and he's a product of student activism, just like myself. That means we met at the University of Nairobi, and we do not have a background, or we don't have roots with the working class, but our roots are from the petty bourgeoisie background. For example, myself, I am a son of a peasant, in the village, and Benedict Washira was actually, the son of a government bureaucrat, and we made it to the University of Nairobi. And we cannot say that when we met, we were basically communists. The struggles within the student movement that led us to introduce ourselves to certain literatures, and basically when we met the yesteryears progressives within the university and outside the university, that is how um, our mind really met a convergence, and we have been together for more than 10 years with him, and we pretty much know each other very well. And I will say that sometimes the decisions that people make are more of based on their circumstances, their material circumstances, basically. Because I was taken aback by certain things because we were approaching the Bujoy elections. And I can tell you that the Communist Party of Kenya had made their position known, why they were going to participate in that election. But we have also have to admit that we were experiencing serious difficulties in terms of, financing the party. And the Bujoy election is an auction place where people with money, goes to try and buy voters, and after buying the voters, then they try to get back their investment in terms of corrupt dealings. But the Communist Party of Kenya published a position, and the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Kenya, which at that time was Benedict Washira, and the chairperson Mwandawiro Mganga, was a party to that document. And that document is still on our website. It is called "On the 2022 National Elections, Kenyan to Think Outside the Box." Now, Benedict Washira himself, we were with him in the Young Social Democrats League when the party was still Social Democratic Party of Kenya. And at that time, we were only budding communists, and we were sharing our experiences. So we basically were the key pillars in the youth league of the Young Social Democrats. And from there, then a war, basically a struggle emerged in the party between the reformists and the revolutionaries. And we seized the moment to push the party to entirely the left. And that one we did consciously with him. So he was a young comrade behind me, and I was still in active, employment at that time. So we needed somebody who could work full time in the party headquarters to help us to build the party. So we could not say that we were already a communist party. The thing is that we emerged victorious in a reformist space, and we had not prepared much in terms of taking the leadership of the party at that time. And when that opportunity arises, Benedict Washira took the position of the Secretary General, basically based on trust that at the moment he will be learning on the job, and in the next few years we will then be able to hold a national congress in the next session, so that we could be able to then turn around and have a proper structures built within the party. So that's how he managed to become the Secretary General of the Social Democratic Party at even a very young age. And also, we cannot say that position he earned it from the party cadres, but it is a position that was bestowed upon him by the emergence of the youth league at that time that had just been declared victory over the party, and there were positions to be filled, and at that moment he was available in terms of time, and we gave him that position in trust, and then we started to build the party. So we were just about to hold the Congress, which we did in 2019. And again, comrade, we have to accept that to build a communist party in this part of the hemisphere is an uphill task. So when we held our Congress, we did not have enough revolutionaries to take positions of leadership in the party. So we had a Congress, but we could not say that Congress will make us a communist party by pronunciation. In fact, we were encouraged by the chairperson's speech that we actually published in the website, and the chairperson's speech actually was centered on how do we build a communist party and how do we make ourselves communist. That was in 2019, and we knew that the Communist Party of Kenya was not going to be built by a one-off Congress that was actually, full of reformists. So we said that the most immediate task in the party will be to start, the immediate process of building party cadres. And I was meant to be in charge of the party ideological school. And that means I developed the curriculum collectively with my comrades, and we started the hardest task, which was to recruit the best stratas in the working class, areas, and put them into study circles and thoroughly, expose them to the immortal science of Marxist-Leninist to prepare them for positions of leadership in the party. So this is a task that we took very seriously, but also we must admit that from our background, we are from the student, we are product of the student struggle, we are product of student activism. We had more contacts within the university than, in the working class areas. So we realized that one of the mistakes we did, that we recruited mostly from the students, and that was majorly the petty bourgeois stratas of the Kenyan society. And we had to consciously again discuss in the party that we must make sure that at least 70% of our leadership or 70% of our membership are from the petty, are not from the petty bourgeoisie stratas, but are from the working class. What must have necessitated my comrades, Benedict and Wachira and Mwandawiro Mganga, to fall in error could be the difficult situations that the party was, which I do not want to excuse them for that, but because there was these two individuals were one of the highest, trusted people in the communist movement. They were the pillars, of the leadership in the Communist Party of Kenya. So that means they understood what democratic centralism is. They understood the purpose in which we were participating in this election. And we had said that with or without money, we are going to participate in these election processes for the mere reason that we want to do our propaganda, escalate our propaganda when the masses are active, and then, make sure that the Communist Party of Kenya is known and declared as a national movement. And that is what the task that we were going to do. But amid the way when we were planning for these elections, we came up with ways to raise resources. And that is how the problem started in the party. Because Mwandawiro Mganga is my chairperson, is also a product of many struggles in Kenya. So that means he has friends and comrades across the divide. So when the decision was made that we pay a visit to the Vice President of Kenya, first of all, I was very uncomfortable with it because I knew that there was nothing much we were going to be able to achieve there. But having said that, I still made it to that meeting. And I came out of that meeting quite depressed because the trajectory in which my comrades wanted to take the party, even without the due consultation, forget about even the due process of the party through democratic centralism, was a bit too disturbing for me. Anyway, they went ahead and signed an agreement to support a tribal bigot. I call him an extreme, evangelical fundamentalist in the name of Mr. Ruto. And it was basically an attempt to get resources to finance our campaigns. There was nothing ideological about it. In fact, there was no document that was published. It is our routine in the party. In fact, one of the things that we do in the Communist Party of Kenya is to manufacture analysis before we do any, before we make any move. But this is a decision that was made by two individuals. These two individuals started now to justify after making the decision. Now, the most childish thing they ever said to the membership of the Communist Party of Kenya, which I felt that I had lost my comrades completely, because instead of accepting the mistakes that or the error they have fell into, then they started defending that error using Marxism literature. So they said that the hustler narrative that was being, actually the hustler rhetoric meant that the masses, or the Kenyan masses, were ahead of the party. So we have to catch up with the Kenyan masses by adopting the hustler narrative. And then, secondly, they went ahead and said that it was an opportunity for us to impose class consciousness from a force above the working class, which that means you're going to use the bourgeoisie privileges to imbue revolutionary consciousness among the Kenyan masses. To me, I found that very dishonest. I found that, as it was an infantile disorder, by to call it its own name. And I asked them that if that is your position in the party, please write it down and let us have discussions within the ranks and the membership of the party. And it will go down in history that for the very reason that you think that the masses were ahead of us, you decided to get into a relationship with the bourgeoisie, the national bourgeoisie, and comprado bourgeoisie to build the Communist Party of Kenya. In fact, up to date, they have not put, any ink on paper to try and absolve themselves from those mistakes that were made by them. In fact, they accused the faction that actually was led by myself that we are, we want to be neutral, that we were talking about neutrality, we were indecisive. But I told them, comrades, listen, wait a minute. We are not talking about class neutrality. We are only saying that we don't want to choose one better thief over the other. So we are neutral in the question of thieves, but we are not class neutral. In fact, we are a family in within the working class masses. So that, of course, split the party into two hostile camps. A minority that is being led by them, that was basically trying to revise Marxism to justify their errors, and of course the majority of the membership that we then are the revolutionary faction. So for that reason, then they gave out a blanket threat that they are going to withdraw my candidature, and since we endowed them, we trusted them, that they were our comrades, they're the people that are meant to sign, the bourgeois certificate to necessitate comrades to participate in bourgeois elections. So they decided to punish a few comrades, and that punishment was actually to deny us an opportunity through bourgeois legality to participate in the election. So in actual sense, we see that the comrades have fallen in an error. They can still redeem themselves, but for us, we are only asking them to come back to the party line. We say that the bourgeois elections was not meant to divide us. It was not meant for to self-enrich individuals in the party. And the Communist Party of Kenya, comrade, must be known that the Communist Party of Kenya can never be owned by any individual. In fact, the Communist Party of Kenya is a product of the struggle of the Kenyan people. And that struggle started post-independence. And people have died, people have sacrificed in the streets of Nairobi. They have martyred, fighting for this democratic space that today we enjoy. So we can never say, Buka can never say, for example, myself, that I own the Communist Party of Kenya. Even the current membership of the Communist Party of Kenya must always remember that the Communist Party of Kenya is a product of the struggle of the Kenyans that have paid a heavy price with their lives. And that is what I keep to remind, my former comrades.
Wow. Yeah. That's a very, very good detailed explanation, which I didn't hear before about what had happened within the party dynamics. Um, Incidentally, I know that you did make a mention of the U.S. Embassy, and actually, in the northern press, um, the Kenyan elections were highlighted a little bit more than usual. Usually, they don't even talk about African elections, but apparently, the Kenyan election was important to the Canadian press and to the American press. So, what do you make of the U.S. and NATO putting a particular importance on the Kenyan elections?
What I could say, maybe, comrade, look at the behavior of both presidential candidates. That will tell you how much rooted the United States and foreign interests are in our country. In fact, if we can look at the analysis of the presidential candidates before the elections and after elections, you can only come to one conclusion, that one of the presidential candidates, Mr. Raila, Mr. Odinga, is an obvious imperialist stooge and is not embarrassed about it. And the second person, who is Mr. Ruto, is another imperialist stooge, but is hiding in Christianity, is hiding in evangelical fundamentalism, to hide those credentials. But if we are to look at the way they did their fundraising, the first thing, that each presidential candidate made a tour to Israel, they made a tour to the United States, they made a tour to to visit London, and to clearly identify themselves with the Western democracies. Now, we didn't see any different thinking around these two presidential candidates. And then, voila, when the elections were announced, all of them went to the embassy. They were invited, and there was a delegation from Washington to try and meet both the presidential candidates. So that is our imperialist interest. In fact, we say that in East Africa, Kenya is the belly of imperialism. It's the belly of capitalism, and for certain reasons. The first reason, that in the last few years, we have seen the American military bases, they have actually been installed permanently for the first time in the Kenyan soil. So are Americans willing to leave those military bases? Of course, they know the Communist Party's position is very clear. We cannot go that direction. They know a few other progressives that have been highlighting the dangers of allowing foreign military governments in our airspace, in our naval bases. In fact, through the United States will want to actually, infuse the military power. They infuse the two, the Kenyan local military power and the United States military power. And they want to make it a predator military power, an imperialist military power. So that is a serious interest. If you look at the new base in Lamu, the new base in Northeastern, so they are not taking chances to allow any progressive voices in Kenya. And the United States of Kenya, the United States Embassy in Kenya knew that the Communist Party of Kenya was rising every day. And what did they do? In my own opinion, and this has been discussed fairly very well in the left in Kenya, is that the strategy was to infringe the Communist Party of Kenya, infiltrate it, then destabilize it, and then make it, an appendage of a kleptocrat like Mr. Ruto. And then after that, then deal summarily with any progressive elements with the Communist Party of Kenya. Because if you see Comrade Gasheke, who was not even quite vocal in terms of, opposing the, he wasn't quite vocal, but he made his principle known that he will never support a kleptocrat, a corrupt individual, somebody in the caliber of Mr. Ruto to lead our country. Then he was told, you cannot vie with the Communist Party of Kenya because I'm the Secretary General and my signature matters. Myself, who had a bit of clout and a bit of support among the people, then we had the courage to take the matter for, the bourgeois legality. Of course, we did not have any much to do it, but we went there to document history, to highlight those processes and expose the failures of the bourgeoisie jurisprudence, which we did quite a bit. So the American interest in our country, and especially even the Western democracy, there is the most lethal, British army in our country, the Batuk, that has been committing serious crimes in Nanyuki, rape, and they have been accused of leaving, grenades to misfire and killing people in their training grounds, and they are the most, hated kind of individuals that the Kenyan society ever known about. So the biggest interest for the United States and the Western allies was to make sure that their military bases in our country is unperturbed, they are undisturbed. And that is why they are determined even to make sure that Mr. Odinga and Mr. Ruto can talk. And I can tell you that the American interest is that they need a handshake to harmonize the two imperialists and to actually put, American hegemony in our country even much more firmly. The second thing that we can see is the war in Somalia. The United States have always have an interest, and they have colonized part of Somalia and declared it free, the Somaliland. Now we have Kenyan soldiers, even though the Communist Party of Kenya supported that foreign policy when there were a lot of terrorist attacks from Somali, but the Amazon brigade, that the Amazon forces that Kenya serves under, is an imperialist outfit there. And the United States will want that policy to continue in that way. What about if you look at the AGOA program that was started by Barack Obama, which was the EPZ, economic processing zones, in our country, the left, we call it modern day slavery or modern day slavery camps, because it is a secluded industrial area where multinationals come mainly from the United States, and they get subsidies from water, from electricity, and then they pay as low as possible, and sometimes they even put more pressure upon the government to suspend the wage limits. So it is a place of anarchy. It is a place where profit rules, where humanity is abandoned. So there is a lot of United States interest now. They see Kenya, as the connecting ground for the countries in East Africa, and in fact, the Kenyan governments have been very American-driven or Eurocentric, as opposed to our brothers and sisters here from Tanzania. So there is we cannot ever forget that the United States want to be an important stakeholders. Look at the American NGOs led by USAID. Look at UK aid here. Look at all the American organizations that are here to drive the Kenyan masses out of reality. So American looks at Nairobi as their headquarters, where they can come and do their ball and leave. In fact, if you remember, comrade, the only year that the United States interest and the European interest were actually disturbed in Nairobi, and it was when the International Criminal Court had indicted the presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta, the deputy, Mr. Ruto at that time. And for a moment, the two individuals even embraced Pan-Africanism. They embraced the Communist Party. Why did they do that? They were doing it opportunistically because the Communist Party had made it clear that ICC is an imperialist court. But after Uhuru Kenyatta won, then he started to look at China. He started to look at on the East. And at that time, the American interest felt, a bit more challenged. And I think they are now planning to come through this kleptocracy that has just is warming up for power to even to put more pressure on the Kenyan government to make their foreign policies, more Eurocentric, or if you call it more American driven.
Wow. You know, all these things end up making me think of something. At one point during your discussions, I think it was an interview you did exclusively with your party, and it's on your party YouTube page. You had talked about the Constitution as it is right now in Kenya being a progressive constitution as a way forward from the 1963 Constitution. So that kind of makes me ask. Going forwards, assume you're able to overcome all the difficulties, overcome the U.S. military bases, the U.S. embassy, and seize power tomorrow. Would you leave that constitution in place, or would you rewrite it completely to be more like a constitution that socialist states have implemented historically? What do you see? Um, is this a constitution just a stepping stone, or do you see it as something that you can leave in place while trying to implement socialism?
Yeah, first of all, the aspect of a constitution as an instrument of the state can be interpreted or implemented to favor the class that wields the instruments of power. So that means, however progressive the constitution is, but the judiciary got to interpret it, the executive needs to implement it, and the parliament needs to actually pass enactments, actually enact laws to implement it. So even though the Kenyan Constitution 2010 is progressive, but we cannot say it is revolutionary. But it is a leap in the Kenyan struggle. In fact, the bourgeoisie, the national bourgeoisie and the comprado bourgeoisie that are holding on state power, on this neo-colonial state, have interpreted the progressive constitution by and large to actually favor the interest of a few. So what will the Communist Party of Kenya, what use will be the constitution, the current constitution of the Communist Party of Kenya? The beauty of that constitution, that even without the Communist Party of Kenya being in government, the constitution guarantees us the civic space and the political space to organize without having to be arrested by the police or murdered or be taken to court. So the constitution protects the institution of political parties. And those political parties can be as diverse as we have seen in Kenya, from the left to the right. So that to us is a good thing. The second thing is that we can use the same constitution to put more pressure on the neo-colonial state to deliver certain things that can ameliorate the lives of the working class. For example, in terms of representation, I have been, and many members of the Communist Party have been using the same constitution to hold elected leaders accountable, and even starting a prosecution on corruption cases. And that space is created by that constitution. So we can use the constitution to put more pressure on the current neo-colonial state to try and improve the lives of the poor people, the working class. Now, when we take power, we can either take power through what you call electoral processes, like, for example, the case in Venezuela. When you take power in that way, then you know that power is limited, a power that is taken from electoral processes. So the first thing is that we will use the Kenyan constitution to interpret it to favor the majority of the population, the Kenyans, workers, and the poor. And we will focus on clauses that deals with human and social rights issues, right to shelter with dignity, right to housing, right to schooling. We can use it even to reinterpret the land clause, because now the current political elite are interpreting land, because there are three-tier land system in Kenya. We have the community land, we have the public land, and then we have the private land. But you always realize that the private land takes precedence. The multinationals that own land, the individuals that own land are always being compensated highly for public services or community services. And from the look of things and the ruling, the community land and the public land takes a backstage. So that interpretation, that class interpretation of the Constitution will come in handy, but only for transition. Because remember, the proletariat state, the Constitution, and all the instruments of the state are only a transition in the process of building socialism towards communism. So, in fact, what is the end goal of communism? Is it not the end of all authority, that no group of people or no single individual can impose his or her will upon the rest of the population? So we can say that the 2010 Constitution, however progressive it is, the Communist Party of Kenya can only use it before it's elected to put more pressure into a government to implement certain reforms. And secondly, if we take power through the electoral processes, then we can use it as a transition. But if we take power through revolutionary means, then of course we will have to immediately start the process of destroying the bourgeoisie state to atoms. And then only that we can start to build a pro-people state. And of course, we will implement the minimum program that is in our communist manifesto. We expropriate the expropriators. We will nationalize all the commanding heights of the economy. We will, break the bourgeois military and, develop people's pro-people proletariat, the armed ones. We will then start the process of building the socialist state towards communism. And that will majorly depend on our internal circumstances and on a lesser stage, external circumstances.
That was a beautiful explanation. And I think, that really makes clear what the party strives to do and strives to achieve for its people. So, just as we always like to do, any final last minute messages you want to give to the Canadian audience, and just discuss what Canada's role is in this particular election episode.
What I could tell the Canadian audience, that in as much as the Kenyan elections have been praised to be the most transparent, but it's only a process, to ferment, to anchor the dictatorship of a few rich people in our country. So any appraisals on the Canadian media that they can see, then they can only be interpreted as a process that allows the poor people or the working class to elect one of the people from the oppressing class, or a group of a few people from the oppressing class to continue to oppress them. So for us, it is clear in our mind that we do not expect much. In fact, with Mr. Odinga's presidency or Mr. Ruto's presidency, in either way, we can only expand our ranks to intensify the struggle for the working class and also to build the party. They also have to know that the people of the South love the workers, the working class people in Canada, and sympathize with their situations. We sympathize with the immigrants in Canada that have left their own countries mainly because of imperialist wars. And we also sympathize because the Canadian government have been in, unholy marriage with the United States government. They are mainly, alliances of war. And and we have been following, very closely what is happening between the imperialist alliances, and how they affect our organizations from the south. In fact, I can ask, really, uh, honestly and humbly, that the working class in Canada should continue organizing to keep their government busy at home, so that the people or the progressives abroad can get a breathing space to organize. If the United States working class, the European working class, and the Canadian working class can intensify their organization and make sure that their governments are busy at home, we will get better, space to advance our struggle, so that they will not be concentrating on forming alliances of oppression with our governments at home. That is the genuine concern that the comrades here in Kenya and in Africa are advancing to combat in Canada. I know our material conditions are different, and I know sometimes we organize and build the party in very difficult circumstances. And we hope that our solidarity to the Canadian comrades and their solidarity to us can be mutual and based on genuine friendship. By applauding that another world is possible, a world away from capitalism, and saying that the future of this planet is scientific socialism. So let's build it today. And we say long live internationalism, long live socialist globalization based on genuine friendship and love. And we say that our victory is inevitable, because we are fighting a just war, and we know we will succeed. Not just now, we are still making advances, but inevitably, the communist movement, the global communist movement, we will succeed.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, we're going to close the show, and we're going to close the show with the song that Booker and Ngesa Omole picked. Would you like to introduce the song?
Yes, comrade. Here in Africa, we sing a lot in our organizing. So one of the songs that really motivates I think we chose our what we call here our women anthem, and we it was a song that was basically composed by the miners' wives in Britain, when Margaret Thatcher, thugs in blue, which were the British police, were raining terror on the British miners. And the song is called, "We Are Women."
Beautiful, beautiful. So, We Are Women, or Women in the Working Class by the Communist Party of Kenya will be played after the outro. So we'll have the outro, we'll have that song, and then that'll be the end of the show. We'll see you next week.